Our next speaker is John Strauser. He's the grassland and perennial agriculture outreach specialist with UW Extension in Madison, and he has been working on UW's Grasslands 2.0 program, and will be describing the social science theories behind the program, looking at farmer interactions across spatial scales.
Yeah, so I appreciate the introduction from Sarah. I had a slight position change since I think Sarah and I last talked. I'm actually now in the Department of Agronomy at UW-Madison as a research scientist, but working in a similar capacity with the Grassland 2.0 project. And today I wanted to talk about this innovation process we're going through with this Grassland 2.0 project that we call collaborative landscape design. But first, I maybe want to give a little background about myself and also my history with Try to Limit with the Driftless and then also Try to Limit It and things like that. So my mother is from Platteville, Wisconsin, and graduated from Platteville High School, and actually met my father at UW-Madison. So that Driftless region is always kind of near and dear to my heart. And when I got started working in conservation type work and got my PhD in natural resources, I always kind of had a desire to keep working in the Midwestern United States, just because of the connection I have to that landscape. And so this is a farm where we've done some work at in this project. This is a Kate's family farm in Spring Green, Wisconsin, which is kind of on that edge of that driftless landscape. And that's a trout stream running right through the middle of a farm there, and they're rotationally grazing livestock. And this is just, in my opinion, a beautiful landscape that is worth fighting for. So it's just so wonderful to be on a call here or a presentation with so many like-minded folks who are so passionate about this effort. So with that, I want to just say I appreciate everyone's time and attention and kind of delve into this place-based approach for landscape transformation. I realized in my abstract too, I wrote that a while ago and I was rereading it last night. My presentation has probably drifted a little bit from what the abstract is. So if you've been reading through the abstract, I do apologize for that. But so let's delve into it. So I think let's maybe start with the ugly first, and let's work our way to some positives. So I think when we think about water quality, which is a pretty important thing when we think about trout, or really drinking water is an important thing. And unfortunately, in Wisconsin and in a lot of our Midwestern states, we have a lot to be desired when it comes to our water and water quality. And so this is a picture I took on the right. So I live obviously in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was riding my bicycle home last fall, and I bumped into the lake looking green like this and was just disheartened by the situation. And there's a lot of things that contribute to a lake looking like that. It's not just agriculture. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But we can manage our agricultural land in a way that really does improve our water quality and improves trout habitat, drinking water, and also improves farming. I mean, farmers don't want this either. Anytime they have soil running off and phosphorus running off and nitrogen running off, that's not good for them either. So it's what we're trying to do in our project is collaborate with people to get the win-win scenarios that I think most everyone wants. So one more kind of bad news thing when we think about our water bodies, and this is Wisconsin 2022. This was the water quality report that was sent to Congress. As you can see, we have quite a bit of impaired waterways in the state of Wisconsin. And so on our Grassland 2.0 project, we work in multiple different regions across the state of Wisconsin and working with communities to try to improve our water quality. And I'm not the only person who has realized this issue. And for those who are maybe familiar with some of the social sciences around farmland use, they're probably familiar with a lot of this scholarship. And so we've been writing on this for about 30 to 35 years, but probably even more than that, to be honest. And while there's been a lot of high quality research and a lot of really commendable efforts, we really haven't seen a wide set adoption of practices that really have moved the needle when it comes to water quality or soil health. We've had these intermittent successes in certain locations, and there's definitely success stories out there, and like we should definitely tip our hats to that. But the broad scale transformation that we need is still out there and still something we need to be working towards. And so this is something I started to think about when I was completing my dissertation work at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. If you delve into that research, a lot of the theories that we underpin our outreach efforts and our research efforts when working with farmers around the adoption of conservation farming practices tend to focus on how we can manipulate a set of independent variables for a change in a dependent variable. Let's say that's adoption of a cover crop or some sort of practice is what I mean by a dependent variable. And the independent variable would be maybe your environmental attitude. So, okay, and that could be like, I really love trout, so I want to make sure I manage my farm in a way where I can protect the trout stream. That's the right thing to do. I want to do that. Or, soil health is really a big thing for me, which like for a lot of farmers, that is a big thing, because like that's kind of like what you got to do to be good at your business of farming. Like taking care of soils a pretty no-brainer for a farmer. It could be maybe attachments to a place. So, oh yeah, this is where I raised all my kids, or this is where maybe me and my significant other met, or whatever it may be, some sort of personal attachment to the land that you really gives you that added need or want to take care of it. Could be something like economics of, to really make my farm work, I need to take care of the soil, or family values. And so you're thinking, so the logic being, just to kind of explain this in layman terms, is, if you could maybe up someone's environmental attitudes, make them more environmentally conscious, then yeah, they'll probably be more likely to adopt cover crops or no-till or some sort of practice like that. And there's like intermittent instances where that does pencil out, and then there's studies that does, it just like is inconsistent on what we're finding. And I think, and so despite good intentions, little progress has been made. And so I think one thing that is getting pointed to a lot in literature that I think we should be considering when we think about outreach is context. So yeah, it's one thing if someone wants to do the right thing, but are they in a context? Are they in a situation where society or our markets or our technical support supports someone to do what they want to do? And so I started teasing out this framework, and I call it a framework for regional placemaking, which is kind of a fancy way of saying consider context. And so we've really thought about changing farmer behavior around sites, and so that site scale. So, and that was where some of the things I was pointing to: family values, economics, place attachment. And so if we can manipulate that, then maybe we could change farmer behavior. And kind of leaning on that literature and thinking about, okay, well, if context matters, then there's got to be a site has to be nested with some other bigger, broader things out there. And so I was like, okay, well, there's obviously like global things going on. I mean, we experienced the pandemic recently. We had, trade policies being shifted. You have like popular culture and things like that are created at different spatial scales. Those undoubtedly have an impact. But then like there's got to be something smaller than that that's also being influenced before you get to a site. And this is where I really settled in on this idea of a region. And I just want to pause because I think region can be a tricky concept to get your head around. So I think if I bring up the word region, people might think of a lot of different things, like the Driftless region or the Midwest region, or maybe you're thinking the North Central region of the USDA framework. And so those are like political regions, or a biophysical region, or maybe a political region, like a county or something like that. And And being a social scientist, what I would say is all of those notions of a regionality have been assigned a social meaning. So if someone's using a political region, so like a county border or a state line as a regionality, why are they doing that? There's some sort of social inscription of meaning that is directing you towards using that. And so let's use like the Driftless region. I think that's something that's really on topic here. What makes the Driftless region? Okay, undoubtedly, I think anyone who's driven through the Driftless could see the topography and be like, this is different. But there's also a culture that goes along with the Driftless that's unique to other parts of, let's say, Wisconsin or Iowa or Minnesota or Illinois. You also have acceptable practices of land management that is acceptable in the Driftless, that if you saw up, let's say, in Marathon County, Wisconsin, somebody's like, what the heck are they doing? That doesn't make any sense. Or Champaign County, Illinois, which is down East Central Illinois. I mean, in East Central Illinois, where it's flat as a pancake, no one would think to put in a terrace or maybe graze livestock on the side of on steep sloping land, because that's really not something you need to consider there. So I got into this idea of how are regions constructed and how does that inform the context in which decisions get made. And so if all of that sounds complicated, let me just put it kind of simply. We have a lot of different things in society that direct what should be seen as an acceptable way to farm. It could be things like advertising campaigns. I don't know if you went to a gas station this summer, you probably saw these John Deere tractor beers from Busch Light. You have entities like Bayer and Monsanto who provide immense amounts of research and financial insights and support for a certain way of farming. You have things in popular culture here. I somewhat hate to pick on Kenny Chesney, but it's just too easy here in this context. And then you have things like our Farm Bill and the Chicago Board of Trade and things like that are all I'm not trying to make this sound nefarious, but these are all things that are part of a context in which farmers are making a decision on how to manage their land. And so if our outreach is purely focused on farmers and they're at their individual scale, so let me just backtrack here. If we're only focused on this site scale, then we are potentially, in my opinion, could be really frustrating people to talk to for farmers, because we're missing how their practices are also nested within these regional and I'm going to call it national context, but I'm painting a little bit of broad brushstrokes there just for the simplicity of a figure, are influencing their behaviors. And so this is an example I use with some students here at UW-Madison. It at times kind of feels like a lot of our outreach effort is kind of like asking farmers to behave. So on the picture on the right is the Palmer House, which is kind of a ritzy hotel in Chicago, and on the left is Wrigley Field. I was here for a game a couple falls ago with my brother. We were watching the Cubs Cardinals, and kind of what it feels like what we're doing with farmers is asking them to behave like they are in the Palmer House lobby, but do it at Wrigley Field. And the kind of the crude example here is where you position yourself in the context you position yourself is going to influence your behavior. And so the way any of us would behave at Wrigley Field is probably not the way we would behave at the Palmer House, the way we would dress, the way we would interact. Maybe, at Wrigley Field, we might have, a beer out of a Dixie cup, where at the Palmer House, we might be drinking maybe a martini out of a fancy glass with a tie on. And so it's kind of similar to that in farming. If we don't think about the context in which agriculture occurs, then it's kind of hard to ask people to change their behavior. And so what I've been thinking about, and this is kind of something we've been thinking about with Grassland 2.0, which is a project based out of UW-Madison, is if we want to shift agricultural practices in a way and work with farmers to improve farming practices, improve our water quality, and improve rural vitality, then I think might be better suited going forward to focus our outreach on shaping the context in which agriculture occurs, rather than trying to shape individual farmer attitudes or beliefs. And so it's rather than working at farmers for behavior change. The way I would say it is it's working with farmers to create, and really not just farmers, but communities, to create the context in which we want our agricultural and food systems to work, so that we as a society can get the benefits out of the system that we desire. So if we want trout fishing, or we want clean drinking water, we want good labor practices and labor protection, then let's work towards that as a collective society. So we've been working in what we call learning hubs. We have 5 of them across the state of Wisconsin. Or not the state of Wisconsin, sorry, I misspoke there. We have 5 of them across Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And we have these steps. It's always kind of frustrating to have to present this a little bit in a slide deck because it looks very linear and like a stepwise list. Should not be interpreted that way. This is very much an iterative process that isn't formulaic. But these are like key components. So that's really the better way to interpret this. So these are the key elements of collaborative landscape design that we've identified thus far. This is a bit of an innovative way to approach outreach and research around farmer adoption. So I don't want this to look like this is etched in marble or something. Like, we are learning as we go, but this is kind of where we're at, and this is based off some prior literature. And so this is how we're implementing it for the time being, but we are learning as we go. So these are some of the key components: is connecting people. So this is about bringing together perspectives and different positionalities. And if you think about an agricultural landscape, there's such a plurality of viewpoints. I mean, someone like me views it from like a background in human geography and sociology, and that's kind of how I view a landscape. But if I talk to a farmer outside Viroqua, he's probably not going to use any of the terms I've been using for the past 15 minutes to describe farmland. He's probably going to talk about soil health, farming practices, weather, things like that. And they should. That's their insight on it. And that insight is really important insight that we can glean a lot of lessons from. We have bankers, we have healthcare providers and communities. All these insights are like really important insights to get and glean from. And there's ways we can shape the system if we know. It's about getting a picture of what that context is and where we want it to go. And so the next thing is about envisioning novel landscapes. So this is about trying to get people from communities together to ask people where do they want things to go? What do they want from their landscape? What are some of the amenities that would be desired? And we do this a lot through interviews and conversations, community forums. And we've also have a team of modelers here at UW-Madison that have developed a tool called Smartscape, which is modeled out for the Driftless region. So if you're living in the Driftless region of Wisconsin, I should say, you could go onto the Grassland to a website, which I'll have the URL for at the end of the presentation. And you could go onto the Smartscape program and put in different land conversion scenarios. And you could see things like, well, what does that do to soil erosion? What does that do to phosphorus runoff? What does that mean for wildlife habitat? And get some scenarios. And so we've been using that. We actually just recently used this at a community meeting in Viroqua last week, and it was a fabulous conversation we had with some community leaders and farmers and some Trout Unlimited staff. Paul Cron was there, and so that was a wonderful dialogue to have. And then we also kind of know if we're going to shift farming practices, we need to give farmers a marketplace to sell their products. So if someone's going to maybe say get out of growing corn and soybeans and go into raising grass-fed beef, then they got to have somewhere to sell that product. And so that's part of shaping the context in which agriculture occurs. And so this is about working with farmers and processors and consumers to develop supply chains where we can connect the producers with the consumers and create the demand on practices that take care of our land and take care of our farmers and take care of communities. And then we have planning enterprises. So if anyone's going to undergo a shift in their land management, they typically need some level of technical support on how to institute that change and help them along with kind of working through all the logistics, whether it be the technical elements of, well, how am I going to farm? How am I going to pay for this? Where would I sell my stuff? You know, all those like real questions that a farmer will and should have. You got to have the resources to help with that. And there's a lot of that around the state of Wisconsin that is a lot of people very, very well qualified at doing that, and like grazing plans and farm plans and things like that. So we have also been fortunate enough at UW-Madison to develop a couple tools too along this line. So kind of a kindred tool to the Smartscape is the Grayscape tool, which operates at the farm scale. So Smartscape is at a landscape or like a watershed scale. Grayscape, you could plug in an individual farm. So if you were a farm owner, and you can use these tools right now, they're publicly available, they're free. If you are in the areas where we've designed it, which the Driftless in Wisconsin is part of that, you could plug in your farm and outline it and say, okay, well, if I have a corn and bean field and I've been thinking about putting some cover crops in, what kind of input would I get? What kind of, what would that mean? What would that mean as far as soil erosion, soil health, things like that? And then we also have some spreadsheet tools that are focused on the finance end of things. And that's Dairy Heifer Compass is one of those tools. So in Wisconsin, we have a lot of dairy heifers because we have a big dairy industry. And so we have been using this tool of farmers to consider the opportunity cost of grazing dairy heifers. Now, I was just talking to a gentleman by the name of Jim Munch, who, if people are in the Vernon County area, might know Jim. We use this tool and kind of extrapolated it out across the state of Wisconsin, and we estimated, based off the modeling tools, which we've ran against real life dairy heifer grazing numbers, and we're pretty much exactly on, that if we grazed all of Wisconsin's dairy heifers, it would save the Wisconsin dairy industry upwards of $100 million. So this is not like chump change. And I think it also, I think sometimes we get into this dichotomy that taking care of the land and conservation is not synonymous with profits. Like you're going to have to lose money to do the right thing. And I think that can be not true. Like that is not always the case. And so, and what we're actually finding is when you consider the net profits, not the gross profits, but the net profits, most farmers are more profitable when they implement conservation strategies. Mainly rotational grazing is what at Grassland 2.0 we would highlight the most. And then the final step is around this institutionalizing change. So this is about, if we do shift our agricultural system, what supports can we put in place? Policies, governance structures, and things like that help lock in a system and adapt to a system that supports our communities, provides clean water, helps address flooding, which I know is an issue in the Driftless, confront and deal with climate change, biodiversity. These are all big things. So that's kind of the key components of collaborative landscape design as we see it currently. And as I said, we are implementing these currently as we go, and we're learning. So this is not etched in stone by any means, but we do feel pretty strongly about these principles being something that really kind of carries the day. So here's some pictures I just wanted to show of the steps in action. So this is at a farmer field day. Here's actually Jim Munch's farm outside in Vernon County. Yeah, I can obviously recognize the Driftless landscape pretty much right away. And yeah, I mean, you see a picture like this and we wonder why we all care and want to take care of the Driftless. I mean, this is just a stunning landscape, and there's a lot of different people here. coming together to learn from each other, which is a really powerful thing. Then we have a oh, didn't mean to do that. I got the chat in my way here. How do I go back a slide? Okay. So this is the Envisioning Novel Landscapes component. This is actually from the event we had last week in Viroqua. At the computer is one of my coworkers in our research lab, Lexi Shank, and she really works with the modeling. And she is running some of these smartscape scenarios with the community members, and you can't see it because it's obviously not like a video, but we have farmers in the crowd are like literally shouting like, oh, do this, Lexi, do this. And we were able to plug those in and transfer them around. And it was a really fun and powerful conversation when it occurred. So we're hoping to do that in more places where we have these scenarios developed. And this is building, some of these scenarios are building off interviews and community meetings that we have conducted. Sarah Strassman, who's on the call here from Trial Limited, was actually in attendance at a precursor meeting to this meeting we had last week in October at a similar location, where we took some of the interview we had with farmers and community leaders and healthcare industry and teachers. And, you know, you kind of think of any community and think of who are like those people that make communities work. We try to talk to them and get their insights on where things are at and where they want things to go. And then we had a community meeting where people really grappled with that. So this is kind of that envisioning novel landscapes component. And then here's we're talking about designing supply chains. And it's kind of hard to get a good picture of designing a supply chain because it's kind of I guess maybe something maybe I should get a picture of a truck or something. But a key component from seeing one of my colleagues, Sarah Lloyd, work in this realm, it's to me, a lot of designing supply chains is getting people connected with one another. Okay, you're a consumer and you want to buy this product. Oh, you're a producer and you want to produce this product. You guys should know each other. That's obviously a little more nuanced than that, but that's a big part of this. So, yeah. And then we have planning and enterprise. And so this is a lot of that one-on-one kind of technical support, helping farmers through transitions, answering questions they might have. And so there's a lot of great resources across the state. This is a picture right here on the bottom left. You see Crouch Down's Adam Abel, who's the state NRCS grazing specialist, and he's just a wonderful fella and does a lot and is always willing to help farmers walk through what a transition might look like and answer any questions they have. And it's not just Adam doing this. There's a lot of other people. I know Jason Cavadini is a colleague of mine at UW-Madison Extension who's doing this around the state. And so then there's county soil water conservation districts and I mean, there's too many people even to list. So there's resources out there. If you are a producer, someone looking for some of these resources, my contact information will be at the end. So I'm a good person to maybe reach out to in Wisconsin, and I can get you to people I even maybe a little bit dangerous and knowledgeable in states like Illinois and Minnesota, Iowa. I could probably get you in touch, but I haven't done as much work historically over in Iowa. So I'd maybe defer to other people, but I know there's people in Iowa doing this too. So there's help out there if people are looking for it. And then this gets at this institutionalizing change, which is kind of like creating a lock-in on a system that is regenerative and supporting our farmers and supporting our communities and supporting our water and things like that. And so this was a sign that I know Serge Koenig puts up in Sauk County, and it's a rotational grazing at work, and it's kind of like an advertisement of, hey, there's people doing this, you got questions. And I think it's kind of a way to normalize grazing and practices like grazing that help build our water and a lot of other things. So here's a real quick picture of where we're working currently. It's a little bit in flux at the moment. We're adding some hubs, and some other hubs are kind of weaning off, but this gives you an idea of where we're at. part of my job is to try to really keep expanding this out. So we're always looking to add more learning hubs. And so that's kind of what we're calling these areas, learning hubs. And that's where we're carrying out collaborative landscape design. And so that is something we're always looking to do. The bottleneck for us is just labor and economic resources. So we're always trying to apply for grants and stuff to get more resources to work in more communities. We know more communities want to do this. And so we're just hoping to get out there and work with more people. So yeah, I will wrap up. I don't know how much time I got for Q&A here or what, but there's my contact information. That's my email there, and be happy to answer any questions. And if you have other follow-up questions, shoot me an email. And then there's the information for the Grassland 2.0 project. I know you could reach out to that too.
Great. Thanks so much, John. We definitely have a lot to learn from the social sciences. So I was really pleased that you and Gabriella both are able to talk about this program. Had just a couple questions in the Q&A. Someone reached out from South Africa doing catchment sensitive farming study group work, very similar to what the learning hubs are doing, and would like to reach out and connect with you. Do you look at other models across outside of the Midwest and across the world as, similar regional concepts? Yeah,
so a lot of literature, I feel like Europe is a little farther along on this regional concept. And so we've been looking at some research coming out of France and the United Kingdom. I know there's been some work like this going on in South Africa. It makes me want to follow up with a PhD student here at UW-Madison, and Mpume. He's been working with us here at Madison. He's from South Africa, and he's hoping at the conclusion of his PhD, I think actually part of his PhD project is going over to South Africa, and we're looking to maybe start a learning hub in South Africa, and Mpume would lead that and then kind of collaborate on some of the concepts. But I would love, if there's more people doing similar things like this, I would love to see that literature. It looks like Andrew Fowler put in that comment. Let me I might take a screenshot of that email so I have it. But yeah, I would love to follow up on that. I by no means think we are the only, like, the first people on planet Earth to ever think of these ideas.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll have to leave it there so we can get our next speaker queued up. But just thank you so much, John, for all the great work that you're doing.
Yeah. And one real quick thing, Gabriela Martinez is a PhD student on this project, going to be presenting a more applied presentation tomorrow. So if people are interested in that, that's coming tomorrow. So